Hey, how you all doing? Well, it's me. We're back again, and hopefully we're going to have another mind bender here of a twin flame video for you. The topic of this one is going to be, and I have it written down here on the tick sheet, twin flames beyond telepathy, transference, communication, knowledge, and healing. How does that grab you? And obviously the focal point of it is going to be transference. And to start off, the last video that I did, I mentioned it briefly about the process of transference, and I gave a brief little description of it. I didn't get into it in much detail. And I noted as I went through the comments, which I suspected they would be there were 4 or 5 people who had also experienced this in different ways and different forms, each unique and individual to them. And I wanted to do another video on this because whether a lot of people are ready to accept this or not, telepathy was and still is for a great many things the next step in evolution, if you will, but it's only a temporary one. And in many cases it happens between twin flames when they connect, and it's a means of communications beyond verbal communication. And in many cases, as many of you have found out, that telepathy doesn't seem to work all that well in many cases for some reason. And in a lot of cases, it seems like the messages are only going one way. So what has to happen is the evolutionary process is continuing on, and we're now coming into the phase of development called transference. And I want to make this clear because transference is, and as I mentioned too in the other video also, everybody's experienced it at some particular point in time. Everyone, no exception. And the example I gave was, you're feeling good, friend calls you up, could be a family member, could be a different kind of situation altogether, and they're feeling low on the pole kind of thing, down in the dumps, and you go and pay a visit, and you listen to them talk, offload, and at the end of the hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever you're there, they're feeling great and you feel like shit. What happened? Well, transference takes place. You experienced it at a solar plexus level, and in some cases even lower in the chakras, depending on what the person transferred to you in many situations. Now, however, what's happened is since we have moved up to being, for a lot of us, relatively balanced and stable at the heart center chakra, this is where the evolutionary process can really take off. And the next step that takes place after the heart center awakening is the complete remodeling of the personality of the individual in question. And this can go on over a period of months, and some individuals, it can go on for many years, until at some point they will start experiencing this transference. It happened to me, about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's still progressing, and I'm still experiencing it. And it's still at a spontaneous situation with me. What that means by this, and I want to explain this because this is an important part, because there seem to be some people who are going to be concerned here that people are going to be able to do this at will, and it's going to be kind of like an invasion of privacy thing with individuals. No, that's not going to happen. I'll tell you why. One of the most important aspects of spiritual awakening, spiritual growth, is the changing and modifying of our personalities. Our personalities, as they were before Heart Center Awakening, dictated our relationships, our concept of love, our concept of sexuality. You've all heard me say this many, many times. Now that the personality has been modified right from day one, you saw within yourself changes take place. You started to develop some of the more, shall we say, higher traits of personality, and they became more permanently established within you. Compassion, gentleness, nurturing, authenticity. You became a person of principle. And over an extended period of time, what's happened is through experiences that you would have, that you would attract to yourself, those characteristics in your personality would be deeply embedded and established as an automatic process. You would just feel and act that way. So what happens is when you reach a certain point of spiritual maturity, yes, that's the term I would use here, spiritual maturity, this transference would begin to take place. Now, the one thing here that I want to kind of make clear again is initially, as a lot more of you are going to start experiencing this transference from the heart chakra, the throat, the third eye, the crown, you're going to experience it at a much higher vibration, and you cannot use it at will until it's deeply incorporated in your personality by these traits that I've mentioned. And initially, all of us, as we get into it, will feel it happen spontaneously. And it will happen with a person that we may not even expect it would happen. And in a totally ridiculous situation in some cases. This will happen to family members, communication between family members. It will happen between different cultures and different races. It will happen to, believe it or not, teachers in the educational system. It's going to happen in the political structure. I'm telling you right now, people, our whole society, literally, is on the cusp of great, great change. And it behooves me to put out this video at this particular point in time because I know what's coming, because I've seen it. And when I say I've seen it, I've actually been transferred, if you will, into that particular, I'm going to use the word timeline, where you can see it manifesting and being imprinted, templated, downloaded, whatever term you want to use, into the collective consciousness. And the thing here about the privacy thing is this. Later on, excuse me, once you have become to such a state of evolution of your consciousness through the characteristics I've previously mentioned, you will be able to use it willfully or consciously. You'll be able to do it. But you'll also have deeply embedded within you a sense of responsibility, that you would not use this ability unless it was highly suited to you and to the other individual. And both individuals at that particular point would be aware of the transfers that was going to take place. I'm going to give you an example. Now, these are what I've seen in this different timeline, and they're only examples. There will be variations of it in many, many situations. I'll give you an example. If you have a teacher, and I'm talking about the school system, the educational system, our educational system anywhere on the planet is definitely in need of repair, modification, and change at this time, and most people know it. So what if you have teachers who, in a system that is very restricted, very limited, and doesn't really give teachers all of that much freedom to do things that would be new, facilitating new growth, expansion of consciousness in different age groups and at different levels, going through high school, puberty, the whole 9 yards. And what if, besides someone teaching a program that's been facilitated by the whomever, whatever, they were in a situation where they could do transference? And the transference that they would do would be based on their chakra development, the personality growth, and information. Because they're in the educational system, they would get access through the collective consciousness of information and knowledge that would be pertinent to new things, new ways of doing things, new doors to open, all right? And they're going to do this with their students above and beyond the present dictated material in the educational system that they have to use. Imagine the possibilities. Just think about that for a moment. Then start and work this through in every other segment of society where we have a problem, we have a situation. For example, in the capacity of doing healing work, all right? I know right now that we have many different hands-on techniques on the planet, but we also have a lot of people who are doing remote healing. And remote healing, I believe the proper protocol is you don't do this unless you have the permission of the individual. But let's suppose that we have an individual who has gone through, say for example, and this is a good example, I'm going to use it right now. Here's the place for it. We have this new virus that has birthed itself in China, and everybody's running around looking for a new pharmaceutical cure for this thing. So can you imagine, and when I say imagine in the future, I'm not talking 40, 50, or 100 years down the road, people. I'm talking the next 5 and 10. This is how quickly transference is going to develop. Because as you know, if you take a look around on the television set, or if you even watch it anymore these days, to me, it looks like the world is going to shit in a handbasket. There's just crisis after crisis going on in every country in the world. And transference in this way through people who can do this instantaneously in a moment of about 5 seconds or less. Download another person with knowledge and experience and information that they have, completely going through a soul level and access to all of that kind of particular stuff. Now, imagine the possibilities of that. Just think about it for a moment. And now I'm going to throw another piece of icing in the cake. Piece of icing. Now I'm going to put another piece of icing on the cake. Excuse me. Duh. Okay. Hey, reasonably close will do. I don't have to be perfect, right? Even I can flub it once in a while. Also, you've heard me say in some of my videos that we are living in a time now where there are people becoming aware that they have soul extensions or another aspects of themselves. There are many different terms for it, and many different teachers talk about it. And you're in a different timeline. You're in a different body. You could be a male, you could be a female. You're in a different venue. You're not even in contact or follow that old belief system of past lives anymore, because you now know they're simultaneous lives all at the same time. All you did was pick a timeline to exist in because you wanted to gain or learn something. So here you are now, and suddenly, like some of the people a few people who made a comment on my last video, you're in a situation now where you're doing transference with local situations. You're doing it with your children, or you're doing it with a friend, or you're doing it with a lover, and you experience this transference, and it's going both ways. Think about this for a moment, because this is now starting to come also. Many of you who know, understand, and fully grasp the concept of simultaneous lifetimes going on realize that these extensions of yourself, and remember, I said at one particular point that your soul coming in, why would any soul in its right mind come into physical reality and only experience one body, and that body being you, that I'm talking to. Think about that for a moment. Why would any soul do that? One body only to experience existence in physical reality. That's it? I don't friggin' think so. So the soul, the oversoul, if you will, manifests a whole pile of bodies, each doing something to gain more knowledge and experience, some of that the hard way, some of that the easier way, some of that that needs to be experienced through some detrimental experiences. And imagine at some point as you develop transference and you have the spiritual maturity to be able to handle the cultural shock when you suddenly find out that past lives, you don't believe in it anymore. And then you discover and find out you've got other parts of yourself in this reality and in different timelines and dimension, and you're all gathering in information, and suddenly you develop transference, initially with something or someone that's local. And now you have access to all of your soul extensions and all of the experience that they have because you can do transference. Think about that for a moment. Then ask yourself this question. How am I doing so far? Am I impressing you? It gets better. Think about when you went back and you had your heart center awakening. What is the one thing that happened that you had no control over in the beginning? You had no control over anything that took place. You couldn't shut it off. You couldn't turn it on. It happened all by itself. What is the first radical change that took place for all of you? Your personality, through experience, and stuff that was drawn toward you went through modifications and changes, and you started to grow and evolve. You moved beyond three-dimensional consciousness, and you started to become a mature adult. You were not a person anymore that was running around from birth to death, doing all of the same dumb things you did as a kid, and doing them as an adult, and just keep repeating the pattern. Because your personality had changed and evolved for this reason, so that you could handle all of these changes that are coming at this particular point in time. And this is why some people will come on, my channel, and they'll take a look at a video and listen to something like I'm just saying here, and they'll say, this guy's a nut job. He has no idea what he's talking about. But others of you out there are going to know exactly what I'm talking about, because you're going to say, hell yeah! He's bang on. And you're right, I am bang on. So this transference, you now have access to all of that information also, and you can exchange by transference the knowledge you have gained here in your spiritual growth in three-dimensional reality to all of your extensions in different timelines and reality. And they, in turn, can exchange all of their information with you, wherever they may be. So the possibilities are endless. Endless. And this is not 100 years down the road. It's not 50 years down the road. It's in the next 5 and 10. Because we have a whole flock, group of people who have pretty much all reached the same level simultaneously at the same time, but we're still individuals. We still express individually. And now we are transferring our experience into the collective consciousness. And this is going to manifest down the road. And I'm going to tell you something else, and some of you are going to laugh and think this is funny. But coming in the next few years, you will see people doing this. Getting rid of their computers and getting rid of that device they hold in their hand and thumb it. You won't need it. Any information that you want or require, you'll be able to access knowledge, experience in that same way. You won't need this to go on the internet, and you won't need it for communication. Transference is non-verbal communication at its highest form, and it goes way beyond telepathy. Telepathy is simply the beginning step to get you to transference by activating the mechanism within your brain. Simple as that. So all of this is going to be taking place rather shortly. Now, I'm going to keep this video to a short period of time here because I know there's going to be a lot of comments. And people will probably be asking me to decipher a little bit more, open up a little bit more. But again, I want to emphasize the most important factor here. People who would misuse or manipulate or, all of the shit that's going on in our world now, the games that people are playing with each other, you won't be able to do this, all right? Because your personality will be so modified and changed, and all of the authenticity and the integrity and the principles of consciousness, which you're going to need down the road also. Because there's another aspect here, and I just want to touch upon it briefly. You've heard me talk about the 12 chakra system. Well, the 12 chakra system are simply doorways or portals to enter into different dimensions and timelines, as it were. And in each one of those dimensions or timelines, there are individual different timelines and dimensions within them. So if you can grasp this concept, you have now developed a personality. You have now accepted some new things in your reality, transference, learning by transference, healing by transference. And what happens is you now have a personality that can move and adjust itself or change gears. Now, what I mean by that is in the mode of transference, you shift into a different state of consciousness that moves you beyond awareness, so to speak, initially of your physical body. You meld or merge or whatever you want to call it with the other person. The exchange of knowledge and information feels somewhat akin to an orgasmic type of feeling. Yeah, kind of an orgasmic type of feeling, which can last a few seconds, or in some cases it may be even a few minutes as the exchange takes place. And as you separate and pull back, what happens is then, as you return to the body, the brain, which has now been altered and opened up to new creative areas and new aspects. Do any of you remember when you could feel at some point during your pathway, and still going on, that you could feel stuff going on in your head, interesting headaches and cracklings and poppings and ripplings and expansion in the back of your head, on the side of your head? Your brain function was expanding. The neural networks in your brain were opening up. And what's happening is these abilities that we're now experiencing, transference, telepathy, they've always been there. This is not new stuff. It's not new. It's just reawakening via the evolutionary process, because some of us have developed enough spiritual growth to be able to do this properly and not misuse these abilities in creative things. Can you imagine what might happen if you had some of the people who were, doing what they're doing now on the planet and then have these types of abilities come to them? It won't happen. You won't have to worry about it, because they won't get there, because they don't have the personality and they don't have the awareness to be able to use it in that particular capacity. So there shouldn't be any concerns at all. Imagine what can happen. I'll give you an example here. The healing, which I kind of forgot to get into for a moment. People on this planet, pharmaceutical companies, have been putting off a cure for cancer and a lot of other diseases by simply maintaining the status quo. All they want you to do is to experience the pharmaceuticals and then stay on the pharmaceuticals. That's the only kind of cancer cure that the pharmaceutical companies are going to allow. Something that would be able to maintain the cancer, but you need to take the medicine to keep the cancer at bay. What's going to happen is the cellular structure, as we move into higher vibrations of light and the body chemistry begins to change, you're going to have people who cannot catch or develop or manifest any symptoms of cancer in their body. And what's going to happen, they're going to start transferring that ability, that awareness, that healing to someone else who's capable of receiving transference and sharing something in return. Now, I want to emphasize this point, and this is very, very important. Pay attention! One cannot experience transference with another person unless that person has something to transfer back to them in equal partnership. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now I'm going to flip it back and say, what's the twin flame connection all about? It's about bringing two individuals into balance. You remember when you went into union? You remember that? Any of you remember that when you went into some kind of union with somebody, bubble love I call it in the beginning. That's the state of mind, the state of being that you need to be in, initially spontaneously when transference takes place, and then later on this is going to become permanent. This is a damn good video. You all need to pay attention to this one, very, very much so. Because I'm going to say something else. In the twin flame community, I'm going to be the one, like it or not, who brings through the latest cutting edge information. And people out there will validate that information by saying, yes, he's got it. And the reason that you will say that is because you are tapped into the same thing that I'm tapped in, and you are aware of what's coming. This is a form of transference also at this particular point. So while others are repeating and regurgitating the same old titles over and over again on YouTube about twin flames, when you come to this channel, you can expect to hear and see something different, because I will transfer to you beyond what I'm saying in this video to those who have the ears to hear what is above and beyond that I'm not saying at the moment to you. Now, pay attention to that part. Some of you will get what I just said. A lot of you, it'll just blow right by you. Don't worry about it. Sooner or later. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed this one. I got to tell you though, as I leave this video, I am so excited to see what's coming down the road, because I know we're going to make it. We are. In spite of ourselves, we're going to make it. We truly, truly are. I've seen it. It's going to happen. And it's all going to happen in the next 5, the next 10 years. Not 50, not 100, in the next 5 and 10. Take care, everybody.